Okay, I want to start us off today with a little word association. I'm going to say a word, and I just want you to notice the very first image that pops into your head. Don't filter it.
All right, I'm game. Hit me.
The word is holy.
Okay, instant reaction.
Uh,
Stained glass windows. Deep silence.
hmm.
Maybe like a really high snowy mountain peak and a velvet rope. A do not enter sign.
A velvet rope, yes. It feels distant, doesn't it? It
Yeah.
feels pure and separate. And if you think about how most of us were raised, holiness is almost always defined by what it isn't.
Right. It isn't messy. It isn't complicated.
And it's definitely not me, 5 minutes after I've spilled coffee all over my shirt and yelled at someone in traffic.
That is pretty much the default setting for our culture. We think holiness means separation. It's something over there kept safe from the mess of, well, over here.
But the book we're looking at today claims that whole definition. It's not just a little off, it's actually a kind of spiritual trap.
A psychological trap, too.
Yeah. We are diving deep into Holiness and Holism by Joseph Garrity. And I have to tell you, this book, it did something really rare for me. It didn't just add new information, it sort of swapped out the entire operating system I use to look at the world.
It's a total paradigm shift. I mean, Garrity's whole thesis is right there in the title. He argues that we've spiritually, amputated the concept of holiness.
Amputated it.
Yeah. We think it means being set apart, but he says true holiness is about holism. It's about the messy, sometimes terrifying, absolute interconnectedness of everything.
And that is a huge claim, because if he's right, it means drawing these neat lines between, say, good people and bad people, or
Right.
sacred spaces and profane spaces.
Yeah.
It's not just exclusionary, it's actually impossible.
It's biologically impossible, physically impossible, and he would argue spiritually bankrupt. Garrity's basically telling us that our obsession with sorting everything into these neat little boxes is exactly what's making us sick.
So we've got a serious roadmap for this deep dive. First, we're going to unpack this metaphor he uses involving a simple magnet. It completely wrecked my whole understanding of opposites.
Then we're going to get into how biology and gender identity are really challenging some of our oldest religious structures.
And finally, and this might be my favorite part, we're going to talk about why wolves and fungi might actually be better theologians than most humans.
I love that part, the wolves.
It's incredible, but let's start with the trap itself. Why are we so obsessed with this idea of separation? Why is that our default?
Well, Garrity starts with the etymology, which is really fascinating. If you look at the Hebrew word kadosh, which is what gets translated as holy, it literally means set apart.
Set apart, so it's baked right in.
It's baked in. It means cut off, distinct. So the very root of the concept is about building a fence. And that fence became the foundation for a lot of Western thought.
We love binaries, the saved and the damned, the clean, the unclean.
Us versus them. It's a really efficient way to organize a chaotic world. It's a mental shortcut.
But it comes at a huge cost, right? He calls it the hypocrisy of division.
Exactly. You have these massive institutions preaching universal love.
But their whole structure relies on exclusion. You can't be in unless someone else is out.
Right. If everyone is special, no one is. That's the fear, anyway.
Yeah.
And he connects it to that psychological idea, the illusionary truth effect.
Which is basically, if you hear a lie enough times, it starts to sound like the truth.
You hear these binaries enough, boys don't cry, holiness requires purity, and you stop seeing them as cultural ideas. You start thinking they're objective reality,
Yeah.
like gravity.
And then when life gets messy, when you meet someone who doesn't fit in your neat boxes, you don't just get confused, you kind of panic. You feel like the world is breaking.
Because your map is wrong. And this brings us right to the magnet. This is the moment in the book where he uses physics to show why this binary thinking is. It's a delusion.
I loved this part. It's so simple, but it lands so hard. Okay, so picture a regular bar magnet. You've got a North Pole on one end, a South Pole on the other.
In our binary brains, they're opposites.
Yeah.
Enemies, even.
Right. And you think, okay, I'll just get a saw and I'll cut the magnet in half to separate them. I'll get a chunk of North and a chunk of South.
That's the logical assumption. But it's not what happens. What happens when you cut it?
You just get two smaller magnets, and each of those new little pieces instantly has its own North and South Pole.
You can keep slicing it down to the size of an atom, and you will never, ever isolate a North Pole. It's impossible.
That's the part that's so trippy. The poles aren't parts of the magnet. They're a relationship.
Exactly. You cannot have North without South. They define each other. The system requires the tension between them to even exist.
Well,
Garrity calls this the fallacy of the monopole.
the monopole.
Yeah. We spend our lives trying to create monopoles, trying to slice the magnet. We want to cut off our grief to just keep the joy, or cut off the sinners to just keep the saints.
We want a world of only North Poles.
But if you actually succeeded, you wouldn't get a pure North Pole. You would just destroy the magnetic field itself, the power. It comes from the connection, not the separation.
So applying this to holiness as holism, it means we have to stop trying to surgically remove the parts of life or the parts of ourselves that we label as negative.
You have to integrate them. And this leads us right into maybe the most contentious binary in human history.
Gender.
Identity, yeah. Because if there's anywhere we love to draw a hard, uncrossable line, it's there.
This is where Garrity really pushes things, but he's not just being provocative. He argues that our obsession with a strict male-female binary is a perfect example of trying to force that monopole view onto a universe that's actually a spectrum.
And he's not just talking theory. He brings in the biology.
Right, he gets into the science of it.
He points out that whether you're looking at chromosomes, hormones, brain structure, nature almost never deals in absolute neat boxes. Biological sex is. It's a bimodal distribution. Most people cluster at two ends of a spectrum, but there's a huge fluid middle.
Nature loves variation. Humans love categories.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
And what I found so powerful is that he doesn't frame this as some, new idea that just showed up on social media. He argues that we're the weird ones for having forgotten this.
It's a reclaimed memory.
It is. I mean, look at the two-spirit people in many Native American cultures. These individuals weren't seen as broken. They were revered. Because they embodied both masculine and feminine spirits, they were seen as mediators, as healers.
They were the bridge. They could see both sides of the magnet.
Yes. Or look at the Hijra of South Asia, who are recognized as a third gender. Or you can go way back into mythology. The Hindu deity Ardhanarishvara is a fusion of Shiva and Parvati, half male, half female.
Hermaphroditus in Greek mythology, too.
Right. The ancient world seemed to understand that the divine, the ultimate source, couldn't possibly be small enough to fit into just he or just she. The divine had to be the whole magnet.
So Garrity's point is that when we see non-binary or gender-fluid people today, we shouldn't see them as a deviation.
No. He's saying we should see them as reflections of divine diversity. I mean, if you believe the Creator is infinite, why would you try to cram that infinity into a binary? To exclude gender-diverse people is to deny the wholeness of creation.
And he doesn't stop at gender. He layers in intersectionality, race, class, ability.
Yeah, he really challenges the reader. He says if your definition of holy or ideal looks exactly like you, your race, your tax bracket, your gender, then it's probably not holiness. It's just narcissism dressed up as religion.
Wow, that's a strong statement.
It is. But he says true holism requires the inclusion of what we perceive as the other. And if we want to learn how to do that, we don't have to invent it from scratch. We just have to look outside.
Enter the fungi.
The Wood Wide Web.
I had heard this term before, but Garrity frames it as a theological lesson, and it honestly changed how I walk through a forest.
It's the ultimate rebuttal to the idea of the rugged individual, right? We used to look at a forest and just see a bunch of separate trees, all competing for sunlight.
Survival of the fittest. My roots against your roots. A war for resources.
Turns out that's completely wrong. We now know that under the soil, there are these vast networks of mycorrhizal fungi connecting the root systems of different trees, even trees of different species.
And they're not just there, they're active, they're sharing things.
They're a communication network. Trees use it to pass nutrients back and forth. A dying tree will literally dump its remaining resources into the network for the younger generation. They even send warning signals.
So if one tree gets attacked by bugs,
it sends a chemical signal through the network, and the trees down the line start producing defensive compounds before the bugs even get there.
It completely destroys the idea of independence. You're not cutting down one tree. You're wounding an entire community. You're severing the web.
You're damaging the immune system of the forest. And Garrity uses this to say that individual salvation, this idea that I can just save my own soul and who cares about anyone else, is a biological fallacy.
Yeah.
In a holistic system, there's no such thing as an isolated fate.
You can't be healthy if the network is sick.
You can't. And that brings us to the wolves, the Yellowstone wolves. This story is incredible.
The trophic cascade. It's the perfect real-world example of holism.
So, quick recap. Humans wiped out all the wolves in Yellowstone. We decided they were bad. The South Pole of the magnet.
Right. We wanted a good park with just the nice, gentle animals.
And with no predators. The elk population just exploded. They had no fear, so they ate everything down to the nub, especially along the riverbanks. The whole park was basically dying because it was too safe.
It became a barren landscape. But then, in 1995, they brought the wolves back.
And yeah, they ate some elk. That's what wolves do. But the main thing they did was create what's called a landscape of fear. The elk started avoiding the open valleys and riverbanks where they were vulnerable.
They moved up to higher ground, where they could see what was coming.
Exactly. And because the elk stopped overgrazing the riverbanks, the vegetation just exploded. Willows and aspens grew back. And because the trees came back, the beavers came back. And beavers build dams, which creates habitats for otters and fish and birds. But here's the absolute miracle.
The rivers changed.
The rivers literally changed their shape. The new forests stabilized the banks with their roots. The rivers stopped meandering so much. They became deeper, more fixed in their course. The presence of the bad wolf physically healed the geography of the park.
That's the magnet again. You need the tension. You need the predator and the prey to keep the river flowing right.
Yes. If you remove the dangerous part of the system, the whole thing loses its vitality. Garrity points out that indigenous wisdom has known this forever. The Lakota have a phrase, "Mirakuya oyasi."
All my relations.
It's not just a nice saying. It's a statement of scientific fact. We are all related. The wolf, the river, the tree, the human, it's all one system.
It really makes that whole Western idea of dominion, that we're the bosses of nature, seem so incredibly arrogant.
Garrity calls that a spiritual crisis.
Yeah.
Treating the earth like a resource to be exploited is a sin against holism. It's a denial of our own bodies, our own roots. We aren't on the earth. We are of the earth.
Okay, so we've got the theory. The magnet is one system. Gender is a spectrum. The trees are a community, and the wolves are river architects. But let's land the plane. How does this change my Tuesday afternoon when I'm stuck in traffic and stressed about bills?
That's the real question, isn't it? It's not about moving to a commune. He suggests starting with just in your attention. He talks about the Japanese practice of Shinrin-yoku.
Forest bathing.
Right, which sounds a bit fancy, but it's really about intention. It's going into a natural space not to get your steps in, not to listen to a podcast.
Not to get somewhere.
Just to be there, to plug back in, to smell the soil, touch the bark, to physically remind your nervous system that you are an organism in an ecosystem, to dissolve that hard line between me and it.
Okay, that I can do. But what about the internal work? The mental binaries, that loop of I'm a success or I'm a failure, I'm good or I'm bad.
That's where he introduces the paradox of both and. He challenges us to catch ourselves in that either we're thinking and just intentionally switch it.
So, like, if I'm going through a loss, the binary brain says, this is bad, I'm sad, I need to get over this so I can be happy again.
Exactly. Sadness becomes the enemy of happiness, the South Pole you need to cut off.
Right.
Holism asks you to reframe it. I am grieving, and I am capable of joy. This experience is painful, and it is part of my growth. You don't try to get rid of the grief, you just let it belong. You make space for it.
It feels so much more spacious, like you're not at war with your own life all the time.
That's the goal. Holistic emotional health isn't about feeling good all the time. It's about feeling whole. And he says this extends to the outer world, too. Stewardship as worship.
So recycling isn't just a chore, it's a ritual.
It's a ritual. How you spend your money, how you treat your water. These aren't just secular political acts. They are direct interactions with the divine web. Every single action vibrates through the whole system.
It raises the stakes on everything. Okay, so to recap, we started by smashing this idea of holiness as separation. We realized building walls doesn't make us holy, it just makes us lonely.
We replace the walls with a web.
And we learned from the magnet that you can't have the light without the dark. We saw how that applies to our identities, and we learned from the wolves that sometimes the things we fear are the very things that keep the river of our lives flowing.
That's a great summary.
Before we sign off, I want to leave everyone with that final image from the book, Indra's net.
Oh, it's such a beautiful metaphor. It's from Hindu and Buddhist thought. Imagine this vast, infinite net stretching in all directions. And at every single knot in the net, there's a jewel.
An infinite number of jewels.
Infinite jewels. And here's the magic. Each jewel is so perfectly polished that if you look into any one of them, you see the reflection of every other jewel in the entire net.
And in those reflections, you see the reflections of the reflections, on and on.
To touch one is to touch them all. To know yourself is to know the universe. You are reflected in me, and I am in you. Nothing is truly separate.
So here's our challenge to you this week. Just try to catch yourself in one of those binary moments. When you find yourself labeling something or someone as purely good or bad, Just pause.
And ask yourself, where's the magnet? What's the relationship here that I'm missing? How does this seemingly bad thing fit into the whole?
It's a small shift in perception, but it might just change your entire geography. Thanks for diving deep with us.
It was a pleasure.
Go find your wholeness. We'll see you next time.